All right, another bright and shiny day this morning, being Tuesday, the 28th of May, 2024, the year of the Lord.
May imeanza kuisha hivi.
Inaisha hivyo tu, just like that.
May it end.
May it end.
Yes.
Finally. Karibu sana to Morning Cafe. My name is Fred Ndimuli. Ile kahawa unakunywa ni moto kiasi gani?
Ama labda unateremsha uji saa hii na ni moto tu vizuri sana. But anyway, karibu to a terrific Tuesday. It is a biashara Tuesday. Leo tutakuwa tunazungumzia quite a lot, but we'll be telling you all about that.
Okay. Speaking of how hot a coffee can get, there's a discussion that's even getting hotter by the day, and that's on revenue allocation. Ukisikia one man, one vote, 1 shilling, ama 1 kilometer. What exactly do they mean? We'll be having this gentleman in studio to discuss this. Kabando wa Kabando, Alex Mwathi, Farma Alim, and Duncan Maina. And do stand by for this conversation because, yes, it is getting hot.
And actually speaking about matters revenue allocation, because revenue allocation really touch on counties. So according to the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, that is NCIC, they're proposing 10 counties to be changed, their names. Because these 10 counties have ethnic names. You probably know of those counties. Kina Kisii, Meru, Embu, Tharaka Nithi, West Pokot, Samburu, Taita Taveta, which one else am I forgetting? Yes,
Turkana.
Yes, Turkana also. Getting in Sahau. Those ones, because there are 10 of them. So the NCIC is proposing we need to change these 10 names that have ethnic names into something else.
Okay.
Yes,
what
because
do you think
so in their reasoning, if you are from a minor ethnic group, so that you can at least feel comfortable and safe in some of these counties. What do you feel about that proposal? Talk to us on our socials. 22047 is our SMS number. 0793-267-279 is our WhatsApp number. You can also call us live, 0795-045-864. We've posted this question and a poll on our Facebook page. You can head there and talk to us as well.
All right. A quick look at the dailies this morning, the big headlines.
Before we get into the dailies, the conversation coming up at 8 a.m. on matters planning for retirement. We're also asking you, have you started planning for your retirement and saving for your retirement? If so, what are you doing? George Oyuga, he's the Director of Retirement Solutions at Kuza Asset Management Limited. He'll be joining us for that conversation. To the dailies now.
The big climate rip-off, that's a big headline on the front page of the Standard. And yes, other stories, including what's happening in Mount Kenya, are still there. And the win for counties as allocation grows to 400 bob. This is part of the conversation. There was a disagreement on the same, but it appears the Senate and the National Assembly have come to an agreement.
Oh yes, finally it is some good news when it comes to matters education on the front page of Daily Nation. These two stories juxtaposition together, the intern teachers as well as the school feeding program. We'll be getting to that and telling you all the details, the latest of them.
Maswala ya kura, UDA walimana. Habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Wanasema ni hali ya mwenye nguvu mpishe katika chama cha rais, wanasiasa wengi wakiwania kuwa vigogo wa maeneo.
Wi-Fi brand Babu. So from matters, I love how zimefuatana vizuri. From UDA politics into now ODM politics, and they say why Firebrand Babu is causing jitters in ODM.
All right. And
picture there, some bigwigs in the ODM party.
Relief as TSC opts to employ interns. Finally, GSS intern teachers who've been striking finally getting employment. That's the front page of the People Daily.
Towards cost Heineken 1.8 billion cash shillings in draw with the tycoon. Those two words are without prejudice or prejudice.
Okay. So we'll be looking at that in more details. Across the border in Uganda, businessmen wanted over ritual murders. This is a new vision. Can you imagine such a headline?
Like a tabloid.
Can you imagine such a headline in a Kenyan daily on the front page? And they have an image there of suspected thugs.
Detectives.
They're taking the detectives to the crime scene. Kueleza kinagaubaga jinsi
zoom in for the
mulivyo commit crime. Yes.
Kwa barabara pale wameshikwa.
Tuende tuonyeshe vile tulifanya hii maneno. But the big news there, businessmen wanted over ritual murders. Can only happen in Uganda.
Now it up to blood from murdered women.
Yes.
Wow.
All right. Across the border in Tanzania,
The Bank of Tanzania explains award of banknotes tender. They say Central Bank Governor Emmanuel Tutuba says the selection of British security printer De La Rue International Limited and Korean currency of Malta was based on established procedures during the valuation process. That is the big story for the day. Occupies well 3/4 of the land there. And other stories, well,
finally kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi ni maumivu, masuala ya vivuko Kigamboni. Haya ndio wanayapitia wananchi wanaotumia vivuko hivyo. Uendeshaji wake wagubikwa na siri nzito, huku TEMESA ikibebeshwa zigo la gharama bila msaada. Ni masuala ya feri, kwenye kivuko.
Usafirishaji kama kawaida.
Usafirishaji ni ripoti maalum kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi. Matters transportation.
Lakini Fred, kuna taarifa ya kushangaza hapa. Saa 30 kuwasaka wanafunzi walevi shuleni Kibamba. Walichukua saa 30 hours, believe, looking for drunk students.
How would you die? Wengine hata kama wamelewa wakai kama walevi. Kazi ngumu pale. Magazeti ndio hayo.
You can take a look at the final one.
Yes.
All the way to Rwanda and see watu wa Rwanda wanasemaje.
All right.
It is the New Times. So UN report pinpoints load tena vizuri, has to do with matters.
I lost the e-paper.
Lazima kuje vizuri. So the FDLR, this is the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR. So talk about how it is pinpointing new hierarchy in DR Congo. DR Congo, this particular movement, as well as Rwanda, it's always a whole tiff on the involvement even in DR. It is going to be forming quite an interesting bit of politics.
The front page of the New Times is a reference to the relationship between Rwanda and other countries. So Kagame meeting the Malian foreign minister, and here what's happening across the border in DRC.
Yes,
right.
That is just a nutshell of it. Let's take a look at the weather now and see how different parts of the country are going to be looking like for today. We'll be taking a look at another one for the next entire week, according to Met Department. But first off, Bungoma, 18 degrees Celsius as of now, and promises to get some quite hot for today, by the way. Sunny intervals getting into the day. Highest temperatures as of 28. Precipitation is 0% today.
So no rain in Bungoma. And it reminds me that this year's Madaraka Day celebrations on Saturday will be in Bungoma.
Oh, yes.
So yes, this is the kind of weather you should be looking forward to for Madaraka Day in Bungoma.
So that's in Bungoma. Twende all the way to Pale Costi to one how things are looking like. 26 degrees Celsius right now, and the same highest temperatures that you'd be seeing is as high as 29 degrees Celsius. Sunny intervals for today. Precipitation 10%. That is probably now getting into the evening. Some very, very light showers, nothing to worry about. And finally in Nairobi, County 047, how is it going to be looking like? Chances of it raining is 5%, as it says. Right now is 16 degrees Celsius, just kabaridi kidogo, but then it promises to get as hot as 25, and then some kawaida to kind of weather into the evening. 30% precipitation into the evening. Yesterday said it is going to be raining. But basically that is how things are looking like when it comes to the weather. So let me take a look at now for how the next week is going to be looking like. This is according to the Met Department. So 28th May all the way to next week on the 3rd of June. They first say that rainfall reduction likely, but expected in central highlands, western Kenya and Rift Valley. Daytime temperatures will be more than 30 degrees Celsius in coast, the northeastern as well as the northwest of Kenya. Night temperatures negative just below 10 degrees Celsius in central highlands, and strong winds of 25 knots in coast and northeastern Kenya. This is just when you take a look at it, getting back to the dry weather conditions that we were experiencing before the weather and rainfall started. So this is how things are going to be looking like.
All right.
Jua nyingi na upepo tu pale. Yes.
All right, let's take a look at the traffic situation now in Nairobi. before we delve into the papers. And a quick look at the major tributaries. Today being a Wednesday, and of course back to school, buses are out there everywhere. And it's looking good so far. If you just look at the major tributaries, there's a bit of a slow traffic around Pangani, which is to be expected. But Thika Road is looking good. Kiambu Road is also looking good. Mombasa Road, Niue, and you can see even Wayaki Way all the way into town is looking good. So nothing much to report about in as far as traffic is concerned. Probably just take a look at what could be happening in Jogoo Road. That's the only place we usually get to see some traffic in the morning. But it's looking good so far, okay, as it continues to load, yes. Nothing much to report about. Yes, that's Nile up there at the City Stadium roundabout, and probably some at the Haile Selassie roundabout as well. This is coming from Landis Road, the roundabout at Marikiti. A bit of a slowdown there. Other than that, traffic is new this morning.
Ama tuseme watu mafuta imekuwa bei ghali,
watu kamua wacha either you're using a matatu or your personal vehicle. Either way, you'll be on the roads this morning. But traffic is not so bad today.
Oh, yes.
All right, that's the traffic situation. Let's now take a look at the dailies. Right, on the front page of the Standard, the big headline reads, the big climate ripoff, saying we're shooting in the dark. Kenya and many other African countries rushed to lease millions of acres to foreign firms in the name of carbon trading. They not only got a raw deal in the pricing, but also many do not know what sort of deal they were getting into and the repercussions in future, putting a damper on the project. It is a big story, and it's there on pages 24 and 25 of the Standard. That's a big headline. The other story given prominence on the front page, cheap electricity connections on the way. And we have a picture there of the Energy CS, Davis Chirchir, witnessing the signing of the last mile electricity connectivity contracts between Kenya Power and Singh Vinod Kumar from MS East India Udyong. Okay, those people. And yes, someone from the European Investment Bank's Lord Johan Wilkins at State House, Nairobi yesterday. I guess it's a big story there. Okay, a mention of the Deputy President. This story is not going away. Battle for Mount Kenya rages on as President's men take on Gachagua. The story is not going away. It's been on the front pages since last week, and it continues featuring on the front pages this week as well. And on that discussion that we're going to be having today, I can see the Kenya Party leader Martha Karua has actually penned an opinion piece on the same. The mantra of one man, one vote, one shilling by the people of Mount Kenya is a cry for equality and equity in resource allocation. And that is what Martha Karua says about that debate. On the top strip of the front page of the Standard, more highlights there. Win for counties as allocation grows to 400 billion shillings. This is actually 15 billion shillings more than was allocated to counties last year. They have been clamoring for 415 billion, but they've had to settle for this. This is after an agreement between the Senate and the National Assembly yesterday. Elsewhere, early voting begins in South Africa. That's on the international scene. And in sports, PSG look to life after Mbappe. And if you may flip the page, yes, it's talking about Mbappe, Paris Saint-Germain, prepare for life after Mbappe, and a picture there of French forward Kylian Mbappe celebrating the win, winning the French Cup final. Man United stars pledged to do greater things. Yes, this is a story that would make my director, Emmanuel Inonda, very happy, and one young man, Stanley, here. But then again, okay, we are happy for you. Let's just say. That's the Standard. That's the Standard. No, we're not throwing stones today. That's the Standard today.
You were about to, but then you just held it there very much.
Yes.
On the Daily Nation, good news when it comes to education. They talk about, in turn, teachers win fight for higher pay. And they say 26,000 tutors hired in January last year to teach in public junior secondary schools can now end their ongoing strike and go back to school after the House Education Committee intervened to have the TSA allocate 8.3 billion cash shillings to convert them to permanent and pensionable terms. with a hefty prize, allowances and benefits to boot. On pages 2 and 3. And just below that, still on matters education, hundreds of thousands of children from vulnerable homes have a reason to smile after Parliament overruled the National Treasury and reinstated a 2 billion cash shillings allocation for the school feeding program. This is after the National Assembly's Education Committee reversed proposed budget cuts to the program in the next financial year. Wow. On the right scroll, matters politics. Supremacy contests rock regions in UDA grassroots elections, and President William Ruto's UDA is facing silent political wars now intensified by ongoing party elections as factions emerge in various regions across the country. And speaking of regions across the country, a question of the day for you: why NCIC wants new names for 10 counties? So listen to this. So 10 counties named after ethnic groups could have their names changed should plans by the National Cohesion and the Integration Commission succeed. The 10 counties are Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Nandi, Kisii, Turkana, Embu, Samburu, Taita Taveta, West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet. You can tell us, what do you think about this proposal? If you live among some of this and in these 10 counties or outside the 10 counties, you're a Kenyan, and after all this devolution process, what do you feel? Should we change these names of these 10 counties? Talk to us. On the very top scroll, matters transportation, trucks, buses forced to use toll expressways. We talk about Nairobi, Mombasa fares, transport costs to rise more on the back page. But before we get to that, not all about goodies. They say US flexes soft power as it advances rights issues in Kenya. Okay. This coming after the whole visit into there. The whole debate about how cheap the private jet and the KQs is still going on. And
especially
Kenyans
online.
Yes, Kenyans online are now mathematicians and economists trying to figure out, if you actually take a flight from here to there with this number of passengers, with this kind of a plane, this is what it would cost. With a private jet, conversations online are just amazing.
I tell you. Allow me to take you back to the Standard briefly before we move to the Taifa Leo. There's a story there that I think many people would find interesting. And it's on page 3 of the Standard. It talks about a survey revealing that a surge in male births and a drop in teenage pregnancies. But now, it's been a long-held adage that Kenya has a higher ratio of women to men. Yeah? But this could change if the recently released economic survey is anything to go by. According to this report last year, the number of male newborns accounted for 51% of all registered births, while females constituted 49%, meaning wanaume sasa watakuwa wengi. So utakuwa unasema ati for every man sijui there how many women, forget it. That's
story of polygamy.
Story of polygamy hapa ndio inaishia sasa.
Wow.
In fact, women should be saying, hey, there are not enough women for all of you. Some of you might not even get married.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Tuangazie gazeti la Taifa Leo kurasa wa mbele. Anaongea kuhusu UDA walimana masuala ya kura. Ni hali ya mwenye nguvu mpishe katika chama cha rais, wanasiasa wengi wakiwania kuwa vigogo wa maeneo. Unakumbuka bado naitwaje? Uchaguzi wa chama. Unaendelea. Yeah. Nairobi kuna Sakaja na Gachagua, magharibi kuna Malala na Halwale, Pwani Jichopevu na Hassan Omar, na Nyanza kuna Owalo na Omolo. Na picha zao ziko pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Na pia wanasema kule Mlima Kenya kuna Ndindi Nyoro na kuna Anne Waiguru. So yes, masuala ya siasa, chama cha UDA yanapewa kipaumbele pale. Vidokezo zaidi, bunge la agiza walimu wa JSS waajiriwe, na kwingineko masuala ya spoti, Man United na Chelsea sokoni kusaka kocha. Pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo kuna vidokezo zaidi. Hutanunua umeme kwa siku 2. KPLC yasema kuanzia Jumapili huduma za kununua stima itakosekana. Habari kenyewe kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Nunua stima wiki hii, usikae kwa giza. Na kwingineko kikwazo kipya kwa magavana wanaostaafu. Mswada uko Seneti kuwazuia kuwania viti vinavyowapa kinga dhidi ya kushtakiwa. Na habari hii kwenye ukurasa wa 3. Gazeti hilo ni Taifa Leo.
From Taifa Leo to the Star, so that we continue the whole party politics. On the Star, why Fibrant Babu is causing jitters in ODM. They say the 34-year-old says he'll be running for, quote-unquote, a top seat. So wait to see the kind of top seat that he's going to be running. He has held frenzied and packaged rallies in 3 or 4 Nyanza counties. I love how they picked these photos for Babu, portraying him as a smiling gentleman there, and others who are probably seemingly looking worried or in deep thought. The other leaders there, including John Badi, nominated MP, as well as Minority Leader Pio Ndai Pale, Wycliffe Oparanya, a former governor, and another former governor, Hassan Joho. But away from that, there's also another interesting story when it comes to cremation, one of those conversations that Kenyans really shy away from to even talk about. They say Kenyans are still shying away from cremation. They're asking, will you sign off to be cremated or have a loved one interred that way when they die? They're saying it will actually cost you 50,000 Kenyan shillings.
That's
so,
cremation.
yes, compare that to the whole funeral costs of now the normal one, the traditional ones that we're used to, which can go even into millions sometimes. So, yes, so take your pick.
All right.
Other stories matter sexual violence. They say grim tales as data shows rise in rape and defilement. And it matters drug abuse, Muguka ruining families and mental health. Hii story ya Muguka sasa imeanza kuchacha.
Very interesting discussion there.
Yesterday the president was meeting Embu leaders on the same conversation. I hope I caused stories.
The parliamentarians argue that yes, in as much as counties do say that they want to protect their people, they have no right to ban anything. They can only probably push for a new law through the National Assembly for a ban on such a drug, if they call it that. But they have no authority to ban anything. So it is a debate that will continue. Right. Let's focus now on the front page of the People Daily. Relief as TSC opts to employ intern teachers. This has been a debate that has been going on since the beginning of the year, when intern teachers decided to down their tools, protesting lack of contracts and difficult working conditions. Finally, and this is months later, finally, after a protracted strike and street demos, the Treasury has allocated 28.88 billion to hire JSS intern teachers on permanent and pensionable terms and promote others. So yes, something good for the intern teachers there. Finally, after a very long time, we have the picture of Raila Odinga back in the news. It's there, also given prominence on the front page of the People Daily. Ruto's new strategy to campaign for Raila. It's on page 7 as he continues seeking that AUC chairperson's job. More highlights on the front page. MPs probe crimes by British Army and elsewhere. TIF elders reach out to reconcile presidency. And this is about the issues within Kenya Kwanza, with a difference of opinion between the president and his deputy. All right, and that is the People Daily today. We can look at the Business Daily as well, and they talk about 2 words costing Heineken 1.8 billion shillings in row with tycoon. There's a distributor has won 8-year court battle over termination. Choice of words in termination letter haunts brewer. Now, this is a misunderstanding over 2 words. The 2 words are without prejudice, contained in a letter sent to tycoon Ngugi Kiuna by Heineken 7 years ago. Cancelling a distributor contract has cost the Dutch beer maker 1.8 billion shillings. Wow, only 2 words.
Yes.
Costly words. Another story given prominence on the front page of the Business Daily. CAK seeks powers to auction farms over unpaid fines. This is a competition watchdog, the Competition Authority of Kenya. It'll get powers to attach and auction properties to recover fines imposed for breaches in fresh amendments seeking to boost compliance. More highlights on the ticker. Buses, trucks to be forced to use new US-backed expressway. So yesterday we were celebrating and saying, okay, fine, yes, at least we're getting a bigger road. A bigger road from Nairobi to Mombasa. But now saying buses and trucks will have to be forced to use it because it is a toll road. You'll have to pay to use it. So that's one way of recovering. Hakuna kuhepa. Tumia hapa. Acha maneno yako. Elsewhere, Scan Group lays off 102 employees in latest restructuring. This is painful, yeah? Listed marketing services firm WPP Scan Group lays off 102 employees. Wow. Elsewhere, Stanchart profit surges 39% in first quarter. And finally, fresh taxes threaten to take the fizzle out of gin revolution. A silent revolution has been sweeping across the whole length and breadth of the drinking nation. There's a lot of alcohol on the front page of the Business Daily today. That's the Business Daily.
And that takes us to the cartoons this morning, and majority of them have to do with that's the Daily Nation as well as the Standard. And the Standard is on page 14, on the Daily Nation is on page 19. Yes.
And yes, the two cartoons on these two dailies feature the images of both the president and his deputy. And on one, on the Standard, page 14, the two of them are on a horse, but they're sitting facing opposite directions on the same horse. One, the leader, which I think is the president, is leading towards 2027, but the deputy president is pointing the other direction towards 2032.
Yes.
On the page 19 of the Daily Nation, an image of the two leaders, yes, seated at a table, but they're looking at a gentleman who's talking on a microphone, and he looks very much like someone from Kapseret. And then the deputy president looks back and says, "Keep off the mountain." You're saying the fact that
the fact that you can actually deduce who it is. Yes, he's made it.
Finally, this MP for Kapseret has made it. Now we can identify and even recognize him from his cartoon.
From a caricature, yes.
Yes. So yes, those are the cartoons on the Daily Nation and the Standard.
And finally, on page 10 of People Daily, Stano is continuing to do the Lord's work. Since yesterday, take a look at the government, and also for today. So the gentleman, which is the government actually, saying, well, so far so good, and he's holding a huge notebook. The General Ogolla crash outcome. The page and the notebook is quite empty. So nothing yet.
There's actually a hole through it.
A hole through it.
Many will never get to know what really happened.
The pages inset are torn and...
Yes.
Remember,
there was a promise by the head of state that the outcome of that probe into that crash that claimed the life of CDF, Francis Ogolla, and 10 others, will be made public. So Kenyans are waiting. But then again, Kenyans do forget pretty fast and move on to other things. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Yes. Those are the dailies this morning. Remember, after the break, we'll be having our discussion on State of the Nation. Today, our focus will be on resource allocation, the big debate, this 1 vote, 1 shilling. What exactly does it mean? And we'll be having quite a number of people in studio. We're expecting Alex Mwathi, a political analyst, to be joining us. Kabando Akabando, former MP Mukurweini. Farama Alim MP Dadaab, and Duncan Minor MP Nyeri Town to be joining us for this conversation. So do stand by for that. And of course, as always, you can be part of the conversation through social media. On X, our handle is at TV47 News. On Facebook, TV47 Kenya. My X handle is at Fred Indimuli.
And your Ringita underscore on X. And at 22047 is our SMS number. Talk to us. 0793-267-279 is our WhatsApp number. Even as this morning, Kiamka, to just talk to us. Tell us good morning, where you're watching us from, and what you expect for today's show. 0795-045864 is the number to call us live. State of the Nation coming up after this short break. Don't go too far.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni Ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business
as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy, who is Clinton, and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are witches.
Together, let's go beyond the limit every Saturday at 8 p.m.
Welcome to The Realtor, where we take you on an exciting journey from bare land to dream home. Step 1. Finding the perfect plot. We explore location, size, and potential. Next, construction begins. Witness the foundation being laid, walls rising, and rooms taking shape. Step 3. Electricity matters. We delve into wiring, switches, and smart home tech. Step 4. From paint choices to fixtures, it's all about aesthetics. Step 5. It's time to get the right furniture. Finally, the big day. Time to move in and create memories. Join us on the journey to making homes a reality on The Realtor, Tuesdays 6:30.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback, ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world of challenges.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. Time for us to take a look at the state of the nation. In studio this morning, we're privileged to have political analyst Alex Mwathi. It's good to have you in studio. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Also Kabando Akabando, former MP Mokoroini, joins us. It's good to see you after such a long time on this panel.
Ndimuli, pleasure.
We're still hoping that Farah Maalim, MP Dadaab, will be joining us in studio. And Duncan Maina, MP Nyeri Town, will be joining us via video link later on. A quick look at the headlines, and they are varied today. It doesn't appear that there's any one thing that that's common on the front pages. The Daily Nation goes with intern teachers winning fight for higher pay, and the state working back on its plan to end school feeding program, which is something positive. On the front page of the Standard, the big climate rip-off. And they talk about Africans getting a raw deal. There's mention, of course, of the Deputy President and his wars in Kenya Kwanza and Mount Kenya there on the front page of the Standard. It has been a big discussion going forward. We'll come to that. And interestingly, in as far as our discussion of the day is concerned, Martha Karua has penned an opinion in the Standard on the same. Today, the mantra of one man, one vote, one shilling by the people of Mount Kenya is a cry for equality and equity in resource allocation. But before we get to that, I'd like us to pay attention to one headline. It features on the front page of this Daily Nation, talks about why NCIC wants new names for 10 counties. 10 counties named after ethnic groups could have their names changed should the NCIC succeed in its plan. The counties are Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Nandi, Kisii, Turkana, Embu, Samburu, Taita Taveta, West Pokot, and Elgeyo Marakwet, simply because they are named after ethnic groups. Now, let's start from there, Bwana Mwathi. Do you see any necessity of such a proposal?
If NIC, good morning, first of all, viewers, and thank you once more for Cape Media and TV47 for having me in the studio this morning. It's really a privilege to be here this morning. If the NCIC were doing their work, really what was envisaged in the law in terms of ethnic and cohesion and all that, then this would make a lot of sense. But when we see them every time waking up to create a propaganda kind of thing, then you keep wondering what is the motivation behind it. And the motivation isn't really to deal with the issue they're talking about, the fact that Meru is named after the people, the majority of the people who live there. Nothing wrong. Kajiado is not named after the Maasais, yet NIC has not gone there to see that every third employment is, 99% of the employees are Maasais, while that county is a cosmopolitan. So my point is that I think he's holding the stick on the wrong end, and desiring that if you change my name from Michael to Kabado, then I change. I don't change.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
They
need to step back. They need to step back and do what they're supposed to do. Cohesion.
What's in the name?
Thank you very much once more, Ndimuli and Mwathi, to see you again at TV47. Completely out of mark. They are trying to create a small storm in a teacup instead of focusing on the big problem in Kenya, the question of integrity and cohesion. There's a lot of nepotism in the national government. There's a lot of nepotism in the county government, tribalism and marginalizations of both minorities and majorities. So that their focus in the constitution is to ensure that Kenya has a cohesive and integrated status, the sovereign of Kenya. There is nobody who is complaining about Meru County being Meru County. It's a proud heritage. There's nobody who has ever said that Pokot is a bad name, or Samburu for that matter. It's a non-issue. So completely creating unnecessary focus when we know that many areas in this country that are experiencing tensions are not necessarily because of ethnicity. It's because of corruption, it's It's because of greed. Why I would go to a public office and bring my clan and my family members is because of the corruption of the mind and lack of leadership, ethics, and integrity. And that is where the National Cohesion and Integration Commission should be focusing its energies. In any case, if we are talking about Kenya and the naming, we should even be more concerned why we have English names than African names, you know? And it's not an issue because really people have a choice of what to be called. People are being named.
Do you feel the NCIC is actually taking a different trajectory, trying to remove Kenyans from their own heritage, trying to get rid of ethnic groupings? Is that the direction they're trying to?
That would be giving them too much credit in terms of them, their ability to put enough thought into the things they do. It's too much credit. Nah. What they're doing is to find the easier routes. You know, when you have a situation, even in your personal life, you always have a choice between the solution, a short term, and one that ceases to be a solution. So they're trying to do is to create an artificial thinking as to the solution that we have. We lack integrity as a people. We love nepotism, whatever you call it. You look at the appointment in the national government. You look at appointment in Mombasa, in whichever county you go to, even the ones that are not named after ethnic names. That is endemic, and that's what they're supposed to be following. But to divert attention from other people, then you create this. In Kikuyu, and I keep saying this, and this is a good time to repeat it, during the emergency time, my mother used to tells me, she's still there, that their mothers, because there was hunger in 1954, 52, 53, 54, their mothers used to get banana stems, and they would put them in the pot, you know, the African pot, and they would be boiling. And because they have no food, the mothers would keep telling the children, food is getting ready. But you can boil those things for the rest of your life and they'll never be ready. But because it was bubbling and, you know, there's something inside, the children were confident that there's something burning. Now, what NSIC are doing is they have lost focus in terms of what they're supposed to do, and they're just boiling those Kabado would call them shiaja, marigo. Shianja, yes. Yeah, those banana stems, so that you think that food is cooking.
Okay.
I hope they wake up. But please don't give them a credit that they have thought that these will do something.
And there's already a lot of feedback on our question online, and let me just sample some of it. Jimmy Moa says, Jina ni jina, hata zikibadilishwa will make no difference.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
NCIC ndio inastahili kumalizwa, haina kazi inafanya. Roy Kim Kimutai asks, sasa Elgeyo Marakwet wataita aje? Unajua, county names are known through the majority of the tribe and the way they landed there. Moody Moses Mudavari says, hizi zibadilishwe tu. Hizi ndio county za sarakasi tupu. Mara bandits, mara kunyofoa watoto macho, yani miujiza bin visanga. And finally, Bax Elect Service, Elect Service says, no need. E.g., when people from Abagusi community buy land, especially in Rift Valley, then subdivide to themselves, we call that area Kisindogo.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's not tribal. It's identification. He has a point.
In fact, what you can say, the commission is trying to pursue an constitutional issue. Because in the very constitution, we encourage to promote our heritage. You know, it's even a part of the preamble, the national values, that we promote our culture. And why we become apologetic of who we are is really a colonial mentality. Those old days, as Mr. Modi would say, he knows it very well, that the colonialists tried to divide us on ethnic groups and criminalize our religion, criminalize our clanism. If you go to a big nation of nearly, I think, 350 million people, the United States of America, with all the millions, hundreds of millions of people and its acreage, massive country, in their national legislature, the Congress, some of the most important committees are actually ethnic committees, and they are not negating their nationalism. You have the Hispanic Congression Committee, is very, very important. The Black Caucus Committee. You have the Asia America Congressional Committee. And that is just focusing on the need. If you go to public universities, including Ivy League, you know, the Yales, the Harvards, of the Columbias of this world, some of the most important annual programs is to celebrate the minorities, celebrate ethnicities, and even that does not mean that they are downgrading the majority. So, in my community, Nyeri, very many areas in the villages are named after clans. Kwa Mbare, kwa clan ya fulani fulani. Even shopping centers, when they were created, we don't lose the old names. In fact, we take offense when we remove the original identity and you are trying to go back to, because it has a meaning, and that's how you celebrate your heritage. So the commission is out of order completely.
Yet it argues that probably in counties, in such counties when there's a presence of a minority group within the same county, that probably this minority group is disadvantaged because it does not share the same name as a larger group whose name now is borne by the county.
I'll give a new example of Kajiado. The majority of people of Kajiado are not the Maasai. The majority of people are in Kitengela, they're in Ngong.
Rongai.
And Rongai.
If you look at Kisii, they are grouping that comes
hold on.
Hold
on. In Kajiado, where the populace in the county, the majority are no Maasais, appointments are based on that ethnic situation. I mean, people could fight me, but that's a fact. I come from Kajiado and I know that. If you're not a Maasai, your chances of getting any position in government is minimal. So the bottom line is, if every county was doing that, and I'm not talking about even Muranga, they may not have what you call other people within Muranga, because majority of the people are Kikuyu, but there is no attempt by the government to draw people to come in. Kiambu, another cosmopolitan place where
an oversight.
No, it's not an oversight.
It's our intention was to actually integrate.
Yes, to integrate, but you don't integrate people by just having a document. You have a change, and Kabad will tell you, I think he's a philosophy fella, he will tell you that change comes over a long period of learning. Now, are we learning towards to change? No. By changing name, we are doing nothing. Absolutely, absolutely nothing. And let me say this. In every major city in the world, there is something called Chinatown. The Chinese congregate in the Chinatown.
Even Nairobi has now.
And they do their businesses to the level where everyone else comes to Chinatown, especially to eat. Because their cuisine is unique, their products, of course, are unique, and the fact that they're able to get stuff from their home motherland, they become cheaper than everybody else.
Okay.
If you look at Israel, and many people don't like to hear people talk about Israel, the Jewish community, and unfortunately for them, they came together because of the trouble they have gone through, not only during Hitler time, but the factor because that was a culmination of discrimination for over 2,000 years, when they were Nebuchadnezzar those days, or those olden days. They are together, yet they accommodate everybody else. Now, you come to this country, the community of the Asians, they're doing better than everybody else. Why? Because they are together. That doesn't change the fact that they are bringing benefit to this country. So if you change the name from Pokot or Elgeyo Marakwet, it will not change the thinking of the people on the ground. But as a matter of fact, it will make them even more combative because they would like to defend their own position.
Like the Ogiek that could be present in a county, let's say like Bomet or Narok, may not have a voice because of how the county is named, probably.
That is not actually the problem. The problem is violation of the law. The commission, let me go back there, should be telling us what they have done about nepotism and tribalism in a public service, because they are empowered to do so, even to go to court and they declare certain compositions of executives particularly illegal, null and void, and unconstitutional. Because the Constitution really talks about the face of Kenya. So we should have a band of employees.
Is it an ideal that is a bit probably beyond Kenyans?
It is not.
You can have many people outside Meru County coming to work there.
It is not. It is a choice of leadership to violate. Even at the level of where you see corrupt guys or incompetent guys being the face of a government, is a choice that the commission can challenge. But the problem we have is that these commissions have been state captured. And this question has been raised time and again. And therefore, because they are political appointees, the appointees in this commission itself, if you are to speak the truth, frankly, they are politically patronized. They were picked by political parties, I know. And then they were presented. And that is a big problem. Then look at this. Go to Kisii. There's a member of parliament from Kisii who I think is of a multiracial composition. If you go to Kisumu, the land of the Luo, Lake Victoria, the longest serving member of parliament in Kisumu on the 4th term is an Asian, elected by 99% Luos. If you go to Meru County that you mentioned, Meru Town is called Imenti North. The constituency of Jackson Harvester Ngaine and David Mwiraria. The member of parliament in Meru Town is an Asian, Dawood. All right? If you go to Kahawa, Sukari here, majority of the people who are living there in Ruiru are of Kikuyu ethnic, identity. The member of the county assembly there is actually a Luo. So our problem largely is leadership, which can be corrected and controlled and managed by these constitutional commissions. That's why we created them in the Constitution, so that they are actually so secured. They are the only public entity whose appointees are guaranteed 6-year term, irrevocable. And there's one term, so that you go there, you have 6 years, you're an independent commissioner, you do what you want to do, nobody can do anything to you. After 6 years, you are not seeking any reappointment there, you do it.
Is it a weakness in the Constitution? Because we keep on talking about this Constitution, and the expectation was probably a bit too high on this document, that it was going to remedy a lot of these things.
The bottom line of the Constitution is that we were drafting for ourselves as Kenyans a document that would be a yardstick for what we do. To an extent, when we thought, when we have had so many years, I think that by then it was about 40 years of independence, and what has happened is that people take advantage of situation when you're in leadership, you become a dictator, you do whatever. Then created these commissions, and as Kabado explains, gave them fixed terms, but allowed them to be independent. If you remember, like Independent Boundaries Commission, even this one should have had Independent National Cohesion, blah, 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 which really means nothing unless you become independent, so that they are the ones that point. For example, you've heard them say that the employment is skewed in the national government. Then what do they do about that?
Yes.
Nothing. Because it's just a statement that they make. Even this, I suspect we are wasting our time, because it's just a statement they have made. They will not follow it up with a bill to Parliament.
The intention is
actually to intention. They have had a lot of intention in the past to do other things. So the bottom line is, the Constitution gave us a yardstick of how we rule ourselves. If we ignore that yardstick, you can't blame the yardstick. We blame ourselves. Wow. We are the ones who keep ignoring what the Constitution tells us to do.
And more people asking whether schools named after such communities like Kisii High School, Meru Boys, will have to change their names as well.
As a matter of fact, yesterday we had in a discussion with someone. He said, oh, okay, they're opening a nice Pandora box. Because if Kisii is ethnic, Then Kisii High School is ethnic. Then Kikuyu constituency is only for Kikuyus. So you really got to change all names. And honestly, Muthiora Mwathi is a Kikuyu name. So how can you have a Kenyan called Kabado Kabado? He becomes very... Okay, for him it's better. It's not. I don't know Kabado Kabado. But Muthiora Mwathi is Kikuyu. So really I should change my name.
Okay.
So that I can become national.
By the way, do you want to change in Nairobi? Where are we sitting? The capital. It's called Nairobi. Nairobi is a Maasai name. The place of cool waters. Nairobi and Kare. So let me accuse this commission of perpetrating irritating irrelevancies. Let them focus on checkmating, on auditing, correcting issues that have violated the national constitution. That is their mandate. Squarely lies on them. Let them tell us what they have done to fight tribalism and nepotism. Not to tell us that we now preoccupy ourselves with our heritage, of which we are very proud.
Okay. Finally, as we come to the end of that conversation, before we delve into resource allocation, but this is still about resource allocation, and probably we could start from there. Finally, yesterday, the Senate and the National Assembly agreed on the resource allocation to counties. Is actually on page 6 of the Standard. Devolved units to receive 400 billion shillings as senators and MPs reach deal. This is a 15 billion, it's a 9 billion shillings more than they had been allocated, 15 billion shillings more than the allocation last year. They wanted 415 billion, but this is a game changer, Bwana Kabando, for counties. We've always, there's always been this clamor for more money to go to the counties, but there's also the argument that it has not been successful as had been expected. More money to the counties does not necessarily equate to better services.
Counties deserve more money. Whether there will be isolated cases of misuse or pilferage is a question of management. In fact, we are all agreed that counties should be allocated a minimum of that 5% of the national revenue, ordinary revenue. And that is because we need to decentralize, take money to the grassroots. And though there may be majority, and actually majority of counties where there are many cases of pilferage and wastage, incomplete projects, they are littered everywhere, therefore wastage and pending bills everywhere, because if you don't complete this project, the constructor will not get a certificate of completion. So a lot of wastage around. However, there isn't anything that has done good in this country better than devolution. That is a dream come true. And so we should anchor devolution more. Let us not say that counties have won so much. It's a good step, and we should celebrate, and we should credit the players in that regard, including the IBEC and also the Senate and the Council of Governors. But I think if we devolved what is in the Constitution completely, water is a devolved function. But so much money is being taken to Maji House so that big tenders are given to the big boys and big girls in town. Agriculture is devolved. We should be taking the National Irrigation Board and agricultural account to the counties. So counties actually deserve more than they are getting.
Are we saying that probably we are looking at pilferage or corruption as a necessary evil, that we cannot really do without it completely? So yes, let's devolve that as well. More money to the counties, even without proper structures to ensure the money is spent correct.
The structures to establish the counties are stated within the law, within the Constitution. And the idea for those people who sat in creating the new Constitution, we had seen a concentration of power at the center. And then a whole business of big man syndrome, that nothing would happen even in my village in Kama until some instruction came from above. And that's where the whole issue came up. And looked at other jurisdictions like the United States of America, where they have states. And the thinking was that let's cut up this country into what you call now they were called counties, but you're talking about at that time, at the beginning, regions. And there are those of us who are thinking 8 to 14 will make sense because there will be economic sense. But we agreed as a country to go to 47, divided. And the Constitution gave those counties or those units of government responsibility, and it's quite a bit. Now, the fact that at the beginning there is corruption within that doesn't negate the initial idea that these are the governments that will reach the common mwananchi much more easily and offer services better than the central government. Now, the central government maintains a lot of hold to a lot of functions that actually should be devolved completely at the pretense of what you're talking about, that there is corruption in the counties. Yet the corruption in government, in the central government, could even be worse than the corruption in the counties. So you can't stop funding these units because you think that they will corruptly use the money, yet you are corrupt.
Okay.
You can't deny them to get that. The thing is, allow them to have enough resources to be able to run the programs that they have. For example, one of the devolved functions is agriculture. Which county has extension officers? Okay. Can they afford?
Hold that thought there, because I can see we're exactly at the top of the hour. This is 7 a.m. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we delve into our big discussion today on matters resource allocation. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback, ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Mbao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy who is Clinton and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are.
Welcome back. You're watching watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Indimuli. We continue with our conversation, and we now want to delve into the discussion of the day on resource allocation. And for this conversation, we are privileged to have in studio Bwana Farah Maalim, MP Dadaab constituency. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Next to Bwana Farah Maalim, we have Duncan Maina, MP Nyeri Town. So karibu sana, TV47.
Asante.
I had earlier introduced political analyst Alex Mwathi and Kabando wa Kabando, former MP Mukurweini.
We salute you.
Karibuni sana. So, gentlemen, this discussion has taken different tangents over the past few weeks, but I want us to start from the beginning. The issue of resource allocation has been the biggest debate since pre-independence, from the days of the agitation for Majimboism. Then came post-independence, the sessional paper number 10 of 1965, which took a different tangent, and now we're talking about devolution. All these were meant to address the issue of resource allocation to different regions. Yet we appear that we have still not gotten it right. Now there's a clamor for one man, one vote, 1 shilling, and there are others who say probably 1 kilometer square. And one may wonder, how come this conversation is never ending, Bwana Maalim?
You know, this country has a pre-independence history. We had a brutal war that essentially was based on resources and land rights. And then we got independence. When we got independence, the genuine freedom fighters in this country never had an opportunity to run this country. Mm-hmm. The collaborators, who basically were acronymed also the loyalists or the home guards, took over the reins of the country. As a way of trying to validate themselves and seek acceptance among the masses that they had persecuted for the longest, they had to try and seem to be appealing to them within an ethnic fashion. Mm-hmm. At the same time, shielding the masses from seeing the loot in terms of the land they were allocating themselves over that period of time. Mm-hmm. So they had to focus on ethnicity, tribalism. The Luos want to do this, the Somalis want to do this, everybody. At that same time, they were not dealing in any fair way with the people from their own backyards who had serious grievances and who had to be compensated for the sacrifices that they put in there. Now, for this thing to, now we say in our language, a dimwit of a man and a calf would always come to the place where they found water and grass. I mean, if you bring water and grass somewhere there and then you bring a calf every day for a few days and he will just come back. It will come back to the same place. Even when there's no water, when there's no grass, it will die there. So a dimwit of a man is a person who sees, look, I gained through this, but the times have changed. Mm-hmm. I can no longer use this as a way of trying to validate myself and still make gains out of it. Let me move on to something else. But then when you're a dimwit, you'll keep on doing the same things. Okay. So all these people who are fixated on ethnicity, fixated on resources, fixated on the capture of the state capture itself, are people who essentially, ordinarily, in a developed world like ours, should not have any time.
Okay. Yet,
so what happened is that, when you say, we have no problem with 1 shilling, vote, whatever it is. But can we go all the way back to the day when we started off as a state, as a republic? We have got less than 130 kilometers of tarmac road. And that is the third largest province in the country. You add Upper Eastern, it's the biggest region in the country. And we don't have any tarmac roads. We don't have electricity, the national grid is not there. And when you go to certain areas in the center, for example, the mountain region, everything is there. So for somebody, in any case, even if that small amount of money, which is in the CDF, was going to be allocated there, it is such a paltry sum that is not going to make any significant difference within the mountain region itself. But because it's a political gimmick that has been used over time for the longest, by the people who are in politics to kind of have that kind of a stranglehold or have kind of that vice grip on their people, telling them always, we're protecting you, we're defending you. Then, of course, they would think they can, and that's probably is where it was from the beginning. Kenyatta who started using it, and progressively the authoring and everything else, it will continue.
Okay.
And it has continued for the longest. Now, but the good thing is that it's good to have this conversation now, because it's going to come to an end.
Yet we thought that probably we had gotten to a point where the conversation was a done deal with devolution, that this managed to get us to a good place. But it would appear not. The kind of conversations we're having now is totally different, Bwana Maina.
The conversations will keep going on, and they are not going to end soon, because the issues of resources, which equates to development, and every region and every community has a different lens which they use to view and define their development. Today, the biggest resource worldwide is the digital superhighway. Why would we not be fighting over the digital superhighway? We are still fighting over roads and tarmac. And even with the change in the new constitution, the desire of the Kenyan people in terms of resource allocation is ingrained in the constitution. That is why we created the Commission for Revenue Allocation. That is why in the constitution we even proposed to set minimums for revenue sharing between the two levels of government. That is why we set up the Equalization Fund in the Constitution. And because the definition of resources will keep changing, then the lenses that we'll keep using to view resources and what we will consider to be our fair share of resources, not just as the Mount Kenya region, not just as the pastoralists of northern Kenya or the coast region, across the country, we will always have a definition that we want to use. The critical thing for me is the sobriety of and clarity of thoughts, words, and vocabulary that we will use in trying to galvanize or mobilize our constituents towards addressing this realistic issue. The issue of revenue sharing cannot be utilized as a clarion call for ethnic mobilization.
Is that what is happening now?
Once we get into that space, and we are seeing ourselves just about to get into that space, we will lose everything about equity in revenue sharing. Let me just bring one more clarity. So we keep talking about this community that is the majority. But when we look at the census in this country, the Kikuyu community is only 18% of this country. Since when did 18% become a majority? So we have, and then after that, we have the Luyas around 16.4%. We have the Kalejins, we have the Luos, in that order. So how come then it only becomes critical for one community to champion national good? Why can't we have the national conversation, build consensus, and then come back and tell our people, this is the way we propose to go about it. Okay. The way we have approached it now is resulting in balkanization of this country, which is undesirable.
And probably it's because this conversation has been left to politicians, or politicians have hijacked the conversation, Bwana Mwathi, for political expediency. It's, they found something. It's not really genuine desire to discuss revenue allocation by any of these politicians.
Unfortunately, your statement is true. And this I have, unfortunately, you have members of parliament here, because I keep hoping and praying that one day they break out of the political conundrum. Because politics is a game. And politics is about personality cults, which in our case is ethnic cult. Creation of propaganda. And once you create propaganda, then you go out and must seduce the people. And unfortunately, since we gained our independence in 1960, we played this game to the detriment of the possibility of this country moving forward. Each time we try to unlock ourselves, we lock ourselves back. Because imagine Parliament, instead of thinking how the devolved units can become units of development, they are looking at them as units to satisfy the ethnic needs of the people that are on the ground. Instead of thinking, what if it's Nyeri? And I say this because a few years ago I suggested somewhere about, because I was very concerned about the potatoes that get lost in Nyandarua, and there's a whole issue of establishing what we call a segregation unit, consolidation units. It's become political. Yet, we're still going to lose tomatoes when the rains start coming in, so that the economic ability of Nyandarua will never be achieved. What Nyandarua needs is to be able to be shown how to consolidate what they produce and make economic gain so that they don't need money from the center, that they can develop themselves. If you go to northeastern Kenya, we talk about no roads, we talk about the injustice that was there. But think for a moment. We have one of the highest population of camels in Africa. And camels are huge economic activity. Goats. You go to Somalia and you see the amount of goats that get out of that country. They're exported from Somalia. But I'm sure Mheshimiwa will tell you 90% come from Kenya. To an extent, we're not thinking, how do we make Northeastern an economic bloc that can work for itself? We are creating propaganda so that we can remain relevant as politicians.
Okay, and this debate around 1965 was more about focusing on areas that are highly productive. That was the whole background to it. But has that conversation changed in Kenya? Things have changed. This is more than 60 years later. A lot of things have changed. Is it right to still focus on that basis?
This is a very heavy question that will need a very serious interrogation and not just the political posturings. When Tom Mboya, one of the brightest minds, not in Africa but in the world, sat with one of the brightest economists of the world, Mwai Kibaki, to craft the session paper number 10 on 1965, it wasn't about ethnic marginalization. It was purely an economic concept that you invest, you grow. If you go to California, you go to Hollywood, you pump enough money there, and that money will have a multiplier effect. And you don't marginalize any. When they did that, they, just like Tom Mboya started the Kennedy flight, it was not about his community. In fact, people didn't want to know where Mboya came from. Man who grew here in a plantation in Georgia, became a member of parliament in Kamukoji, and who defeated richer people from the majority ethnic group in Kamukoji to become a member of parliament, winning by landslides because of his vision and acceptability. True, along the way, we may have lost track. And therefore, we started tribalizing or ethnicizing an issue that was purely meant to grow Kenya jumpstart. If Kenya went on the proper trajectory, I know this appears like a story. There isn't any excuse why we are not a Singapore or South Korea or Malaysia. The elephant in the room, gentlemen, and our host, Demoli, is because of corruption. I want to mention two issues. One, saying that you want to increase revenue in a certain area shouldn't necessarily, and at all actually, mean reduction of the other area. What we should be saying is, if Roiro, for instance, where you have members of the county assemblies who come from different ethnic groups and where you have residents from all parts of Kenya, you can't afford to take a quarter of those who are qualified to national schools because the money is not enough. Then we should be concerned as a nation. If in Tana River, you are not able to invest in Nigarana Kulalu to serve Tana River, to serve Kwale, Kilifi, and then become the basket of Kenya that was meant to invest in a lot of fruits and grains. That should be our question. So we can put more money in constituencies. There's a paper, and I'll be happy to share this in another discussion, which we worked on in 2016, and we involved a lot of other people. Thereafter, even in 2019, I remember we revisited that paper, and it mentioned Bungoma, it mentioned Trans Nzoia, Machakos, Kisumu, Kiambu, Meru, the densely populated areas that need additional money in order to create equity. Equity is not about suppressing the minority. Neither should it be about marginalizing majority. I remember at a near exit of the Moi era, Kipruto Kirwa, who comes here often, a great man, gave a statement that was a headline of the Daily Nation, and accused his own party leader, Daniel Moi, who was the president then, of suffering majoritarian phobia. This is a problem. And let me say, what the counties that have historically been marginalized, because as a fact of life, are receiving, they deserve. And no shilling should be reduced for Tana River, for Kwale, for Madera, for Wajir, for Garissa, for even Marsabit, for Isiolo. That money that they are receiving now at 15%, they deserve, and they even deserve additional. Okay. However, we should also see that those other counties, like Bungoma and Kisumu, Meru and Kiambu, that are receiving money that is not enough to even allocate bursaries, they also deserve some more. So we should be fighting for everyone. Yet, therefore, let me this point. Nobody in this country, Honorable Farah says these mountainous areas have everything. I come from one of the previously remotest part of Nyeri. Duncan knows that. Where if I said I'm from Gumba and I came to Kiambu High School, or I went to Nyeri High School, or Murang'a High School, you are coming from Gumba? It was a stigma. Just like to say I come from Gaturi area of Kiharu constituency, or a place called Dia of Kirinyaga constituency. There are areas in all parts of this country that are marginalized. Let me tell you, there is an organization called International Fund for Agricultural Development, based in Italy, which I worked with when I was a member of parliament. It has done global surveys. And in Kenya, it has areas, even mountain like Mokoroine, part of Daragwa, larger part of Kieni, part of Mwea, in central Kenya, that are classified as semi-arid and dry lands. Therefore, let me come this straight. Nobody in this country has any right to criminalize other people meeting. When the Somalis meet, fine, and we have actually drafted an article last year about that.
And we'll come to the politics of it about the belief.
Yes, no, it's related. It's related. Because what has happened is out of Limuru is why people, I have seen even people who have left parliament with me, or even before, coming out, because then instead of focusing on the issue at hand, they are focusing on an ethnic group at hand. And those who are promoting one man, 1 shillings, 1 vote, should also not focus on an ethnic group to say this region is getting what we deserve.
Even before we get to that level of conversation, because it would appear that the framers of this constitution, Farah Maalim, had already foreseen the problem and sought to remedy the same through the review of boundaries, a periodic review of boundaries. And the
criteria that are formed.
Exactly. Yeah. But we are not sticking to that. Instead, we started a new conversation together. We have already defined the constitution in as far as a review and definition of boundaries.
Absolutely.
Is this conversation we're having misplaced?
No, it's completely, totally displaced and utterly, in a sense, disgusting. Because when you, I put a question myself in Parliament in 1993, 30 years after independence. And I asked how much development money has been committed to northeastern province, Wajir, Garissa, Mandera, for the last 30 years. Do you know how much was the money? 178 million shillings. It was
30 years after independence.
30 years after, all of it cumulatively. It was translating at less than 6 million shillings per year. For 30 good years. Kabanda was a young man, and we were together in politics those days. And at the time when we were in the opposition, we formed Safina together, and I was in Fort Kenya. At that time, we had 65 students from the entire northeastern province.
True. Yeah.
In our public universities here in the country.
True.
65. And 80% of them were children of urban Somalis who are from Bungoma, from Kitale, from Eldoret, from Nairobi, and a few of them who made it to Alliance High School and a few national schools. Yeah. A few national schools. On average, it was one student or two students who would come to the public universities in the country per year. In a whole year. In a whole year. We could only send one or two students. Because we said everything is on merit, meritocracy. Students had to pass and gain certain things to get acceptance. But there were no teachers in our areas. You have equal merit, but there's no equal opportunity. We didn't have schools. From the day multi-party politics started, I actually had put in an affirmative action motion through quota systems, and I remember it was lowered for students from marginal areas. That includes Turkana, all those places, Masailand, and the rest of it. And the late Professor Ishwani one time started taking P1 teachers back to do Bachelor of Education. And a student, a young man who became a head P1 and who had a D+ in his Form 4, came back again through that process. He became P1, P2 initially, P1, and he was brought into Kenyatta University. The Joint Admissions Board those days, JAB, says, no, you are going to compromise on the academic excellence of our institution, so we can't do that. And he broke ranks with them and unilaterally decided to do that. That young man had a first class when he was the top in his class of Bachelor of Education in Kenyatta University. What does that tell you? There's so many young men and women who are getting C- because they have never seen a biology teacher, they have never seen an English teacher for 4 years, but given an opportunity, a genius as these other people who would have been everywhere in the world. Now, we have come out of that now. It's no longer that, by the way. Thanks.
The situation has changed.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. You know, why do you think Jews are the richest people and the most hard-working businessmen in the world? It's because of the conditions they went through for hundreds of years, for about 1,000 years. Pogroms, the things that were visited upon them. When you visit upon people certain injustices, they don't get certain opportunities, you turn them into superachievers. Why do you think the mountain people used to be the most hardworking people at independence before that? Because their land was dispossessed from them. They were given also, they were used as forced labor and everything else. So they pushed into a corner. They are pushed into a corner, and they had to do extra to be able to get to where they are. Now that things have changed. You can go to any department in the university, any of the universities, and it's a postgraduate studies, and not less than 30% of them are from our province. But that's not because anybody has given us this thing. It's because, you know, times have changed. People had to work hard. People came to education was liberalized in a sense. You could, you know. The same thing also happens. I said, and Kabano remembers very well. I said, look, let's go and do development in Northeastern Province. I'm talking about close to 28 years ago. If you don't do that, and you leave us to the vagaries of weather, and you keep on seeing our emaciated people, every 5 years we have a cycle of drought. We lose 300,000, you know, we lose all millions of livestock, as my brother here was talking about. You know what's going to happen? When you dispossess and literally consign to some kind of a permanent underclass 200,000 herders, you think they're going to stick in there? They'll come in here. And those are the guys you see right now building big properties everywhere in Kenya. It's not the governors, it's not the politicians. These are people, hang on a minute. Governors are usually 3 or 4. There's 6 of them, whatever it is. These are the people who have come in there. They've started off as hawkers, selling everything, selling materials and everything else. And now they're doing very well.
Okay.
You understand my point? Don't complain that they're taking over the country. If we had put in sufficient economic development in their own regions, those regions would be now able to absorb them and Kenyans would go there to work in there. Okay. But when you leave people in a permanent poverty, people will leave that place. Why do you think people leave their homes? Why do you think central Kenya is the community 18%, as low as they are, as he puts it, and I agree with him, but they're all over the country. Land is not sufficient. Look at the Kisses, for example. They'll go everywhere. So when you subject people and you consign them and confine them and do institutional government marginalization for them to stay poor, they'll not stay that place. They'll come out. You get my point?
Before Bonamina says something...
No, can I just finish that bit?
Kabando, you were disagreeing with something...
No, wait, we'll come to it. Yeah. Just one thing I'm going to say. I know what he wants to say. He's fixated with 1 or 2 governors who have properties here in Slee. And I don't even know who they are.
I will not say that. I will not say that.
Let's get his opinion about Kabando. What did you think?
Farah Malim is my friend. Yeah. We have come a very long way. A long way than we can explain here. The fact that he has laid bare are facts, and facts are very stubborn. What we should be asking today is why these investments that we see across the country are not reflected in the spread of the economic growth or economic trajectory. I think we'll be in a serious denial that people are not. I agree with some of the prominent people. One of the most senior lawyers from, I think the first lawyer from Mandera, and also one of the most senior economists in Kenya who has worked in Middle East. There's a lot of theft in the counties. And I'm telling you, Farah, let's not argue about this. It is sacrosanct that if devolution was respected and there was leadership integrity, people would be doing very well. You know very well, even from your home county, people have been killed because of money.
Yeah.
You know, in Garissa County, there are people in the graves today, there are people who are maimed, and those culprits are walking scot-free because they have money to bribe in all the government agencies. So the question of corruption is a big question in the counties, and more particularly, even in Parliament. I was with him in the 10th Parliament.
Yeah.
Some of the most remote parts of this country have leaders who transfer wealth meant for their people to other areas. Mm-hmm. And therefore, sometimes the communities have a right to complain, and that is called community of interest. But we should let me repeat, not run away from the fact that we need to focus on making these leaders, these governors, you know, you can go to some of the most lively estates in Kenya, and then the project you see there, or a very palatial home, is of a governor or a county official, not of a businessman. They are looting and bringing it to the capital. Number 2,
which goes across the country.
It goes across the country.
And there are only 3 counties from this, and you still have 44 from the rest.
Don't worry.
And you don't see the CBT guys owned by your own Kiambu, former governor of Kiambu.
We want to let's include the other gentlemen in this conversation. Bonamina, you wanted to say something.
Yes, we have a problem, and this problem is cutting across. It is prevalent in the areas that my senior, Farah Mohammed, says, the region that has everything, to the region that he says has nothing.
Yes.
There is a difference between what I will call the abundance mentality and the poverty mentality.
Yeah.
All of us Kenyans have the peculiar fixation with the poverty mentality rather than the abundance mentality. Northeastern province has its competitive advantages.
Yeah.
But Honorable Farah Marim will never talk about the competitive advantages of Northeastern province.
Unfortunately.
Central Kenya has its competitive advantages. But today, rather than us talking about it, we want to talk about what we don't have.
Unfortunately.
So we are, all of us are guilty of failing to focus on what we have and the competitive advantage it bestows on us. But we want to concentrate so much on what we do not have. And by the way, we have no suggestions tangible on how to get what we do not have. The conversations I hear across all of us is that we should bake a bigger cake. In baking the bigger cake, it means everybody who has been getting their share from the smaller cakes still gets it.
Absolutely.
But those who have been suffering as a result of the smaller cake get their rightful share. How I wish that was the conversation we are having today.
Okay.
Good. Lastly, is something I want to call holding development harmless. Today, the development happening in this country, including the very brilliant idea of CDF, is starting to harm access to education for children in Mount Kenya region. Because the kind of support they get from their share of the small cake in CDF is making us become very less stressed by the fact that Northeastern may be getting a slightly bigger cake from the share of CDF.
Isn't that a direct result of failure to adhere to the Constitution? Because if at all there was a proper delimitation and review of boundaries based on the population quota, then we would not have this problem, especially with the CDF.
The fixation on the population quota is a misnomer. The countries that have developed, how many of them, show me one example where the only factor that has been used is the population numbers?
None.
So then I bring in that it's time for us to re-engineer our lenses on how we look at things. Today, in central Kenya, school feeding has become a barrier to education for children in central Kenya. They are missing school because their parents cannot afford lunch in schools. A hungry child cannot study. So how do we hold this, our development, harmless? First, those who are already enjoying something, let us not alienate them by trying to take away from them what they're enjoying. Those who are missing out, let us find the formula and the resources to give them their equitable share.
Okay, but will the kind of politics we are seeing play out allow for this to happen? That we start at this level, then everything that changes is on the way up?
A story is told that, first of all, for a fact, South Korea, Malaysia,
Singapore.
I'm talking about around 1978.
Yes.
Had a lower economic GDP than Kenya.
Oh, yeah.
In 1965, of course, Singapore was much lower, almost half the GDP of Kenya. And a story is told that in 1978, the Malaysian government came to Kenya and asked for the paper that he's talked about, the sessional paper 10. And they took that sessional paper, and the story is told that they went and implemented it. Malaysia today, while our GDP is still about 1,400, the people will tell you about adjustment to be $2,500. There's about $35,000. Meaning that the sessional paper that he mentioned created a sense in which a nation can progress. But what I hear the members of parliament on the panel, and they will excuse me for saying it because the truth is that we are still in the politics of 1963. Ours is better, yours is bad. We are marginalized, you are doing better. And so that when they go around the table in parliament to discuss development of this nation, they are still stuck in 1963. When in 2024, you talk about bursaries in school, what are you talking about? That's not leadership. That is creating ethnic bigotry because you want people to follow you blindly. In 2024, one of these members should present a paper in parliament saying that every child in Kenya, as per the constitution, has a right to education. The only that can happen is that the education is funded fully, that students in this country get free education from what we call the chekecha. To university? No, to at least basic education as per the constitution up to the 4th form. Free education for every student. No student should be asked for any fee. Very simple matter. If we stop these ethnic communication discussions in parliament and in forums like this, we would have enough time to discuss how do we make sure that every student gets education in this country, so that you devolve funds to the level where the education is provided and quality education to every student. You talk about northeastern Kenya, that there are no roads, there are nowhere. You go to Isinya, I come from Kajiado. Students are learning under trees here, 40, 50 kilometers from Nairobi. It's not a one-side thing, it's a general problem. We talked also the first tarmac in 2009, courtesy of Kibaki. Where are they? 100 kilometers from here. So I wish leadership, and it's good we have them here, refocus their energies to thinking, what was it in this section of paper 10 that Malaysia implemented and everybody became rich? In fact, I'm reminded of Lee Kuan Yew, because when he became Prime Minister of Singapore, he was a very poor country.
Yeah, true.
He says in his book, From Third World to First World, because I've read that book many times, and I think every single member of parliament, every member of the Senate should read that book. And I think I should spend some money and buy all of you that book. Because he said, I had two options. I could become the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
Or my country would become the richest country in the world. He achieved and he chose the second one. Now the joke is told that when African leaders take leadership, they always say that the second option was taken by Singapore, so they take the first one. They become the richest man on earth. Leadership is about vision. Leadership is about providing a sense of direction to a nation. I can tell you with all certainty, we'll be talking about this 100 years after now, if we continue with this political and ethnic bigotry.
Now that we're already there, that this is seen through the prism of politics, and it has taken a new tangent of...
it's not vision of politics, it's ethnic bigotry. Because I'll justify my statement. Malaysia had a political system. Iran by politicians. Singapore was run by politicians. It's something beyond politics. It's ethnic bigotry, if you ask me.
Now that it has taken that route, are we missing the point altogether? Because now it would appear it is one community that looks like they're propagating this. Probably it would benefit everyone, but it's seen as their thing, not unified.
Yeah, like I said, when people have used ethnicity for political purposes right from independence.
Yeah.
And the sad part of it is that you would imagine those ones who lost power would want to try and use that political mobilization so they can come back and grab power again. The people who were in power were the ones who started propagating ethnicity or the politics of ethnicity. It started in 1963-64. Because when you're doing the odd things and everything else and telling the, literally playing everywhere and change the constitution and all those days, this is a sad part of this history, sad history of this, sad history of this country, that one has got to try and face it head on. And I like the conversation I'm hearing in here. You get my point. So what we need to do right now is to say, we need to empower Kenyans, period.
Thank you.
And now you look at what you call the gaps, because we have seen marginalization ourselves, institutional government marginalization for the longest. You get my point? We're not coming back here. And so we see when people are suffering, we feel it. We're still in that state now, today. So when I don't want to see children reading under trees, I don't want to see children dropping out of schools in Deya and in Kenya and everywhere else because they don't have anything to put on their stomach. And these are the things that we lived with ourselves for the longest. So we feel and we know those bangs. But the reality of the matter is that this politics is not coming from people who represent those grassroots. This politics is coming from politicians who are seeking relevance for the moment. And exactly doing what he said. I do agree with you for one reason when it comes to the issue of Malaysia. Singapore was pretty much a homogeneous society. Three ethnic communities, but by the extreme minority, the Indians and what you call the Malays, are very, very small, minuscule. About over 90% are the Chinese. Malaysia was different. The Malays had just a small margin over the others. And because they had a historical marginalization and the Chinese came in initially as indentured labor and the rest of it, and basically started off much faster the way the Indians came to our country here. But the numbers literally, went overboard. They created what was called Bumiputra. The sessional paper number 10, and the fact that Malaysia those days adopted that was a positive discrimination to give the ethnic indigenous Malays the opportunity for them to come up and catch up with the Chinese and the rest of it. So they were given what you call positive discrimination in institutions of higher learning, in what you call business, in everywhere. And they've taken the reins of power because Mahathir Mohamad and the rest of them, you know that. Today, the country is so well, uniformly developed. And you no longer can say that we are marginalized.
So it is almost impossible to ignore ethnic involvement in such kind of discussion.
Whatever the divide is, whether it is class divide, or whether it is ethnicity divide, whether it is regional divide, you've got to look at all these things and say, how do we integrate this country by bringing up those?
But the question now in our situation is, has the conversation been poisoned?
I was just going to,
the involvement of the deputy president.
I was just going to add one final thing. This is the only time we've seen that the most empowered region, and when I say empowered region, I mean relatively, it's very poor still, but relatively compared to the others, and the people who basically have had the reins of power for over 35 years would be playing that. You know what I mean? And that's the political class. It has nothing to do with the ordinary citizens out there and politicians like the ones we're having here and the analysts here, these brilliant people here. It is the politicians who are seeing their narrow interest in there. And that's where we need to create incision completely and say, look, you say I'm the biggest tribe in the country and I'm everywhere. Why do you have to talk about my position?
I want to quickly disagree with the Farah because he says something very good. And thank you, Edmul, because there's really brilliant ideas that some of us are harvesting from here. Very nice. Because you say something good, but you still go back to bash a community. Indirectly. Let me finish. You have had your time.
Political class. Okay.
Let me.
Okay, go on.
You say a very good thing, and you are visionary for my former chairman, Safina, and my good friend. But you indirectly, you have a thin-leveled majoritarian phobia, and that I know. That is a bane of our politics. If you read the 3 books of Singapore, most important, the one he mentioned, from that
to First
in a Generation.
Yes.
The second one is called Facts About Singapore.
Yes.
What Lee Kuan Yew did now.
Absolutely.
The third one is, what if there was no Lee Kuan Yew?
Yes.
You'll see the question of leadership integrity from the first word to the last word in the 3 books.
Yeah.
That is the disease that Kenya has.
Absolutely.
That is why devolution is not working the way it should be working, although it's the best system we have. That is why the national system is not working. We are not just talking about session paper number 10. Nairobi City drew a plan over 5 decades ago how to make Nairobi the epicenter of East and Central Africa, the business hub. But because of corruption at City Hall, the paper was not implemented. The plan was not implemented. The people from Kuala Lumpur came to Nairobi. They took the plan. They went in, implemented. Nairobi City years later, sent a delegation to go and study why Kuala Lumpur is very developed. After the discussion in the boardroom, the host just removed a file and said, we got this from you, we implemented.
Yeah.
But here is because the councillors were more interested in grabbing plots and money. That is what is happening in our counties, both the ones that are near the city and those that are very marginal. Now, today we have what we call the plan that brought this government in place. We should now be talking about why we have floods on Mombasa Road, Gong Road, Waiyaki Way, why we have floods at the gate of Kenyatta University. Is because of how things are done because of insatiable greed, and that leads to corruption. So instead of implementing, we should be asking now, we have a plan. What has happened in the fertilizer scandal? Okay, we have a plan. Nobody will be executed. We don't know who has been executed. But why are we saying even the General Ogola inquiry is still covered and we are unlikely to get the full report now? Why are there jitters? We should be asking why today the biggest budget is to the spouses of the president and the deputy president in terms of state officers. Budget not for development, budget for partying, for eating cakes. Okay, we should be asking why in this country the budget for infrastructure is for Ruto's residences. That every year we are going to, for the next 7 years, we are going to spend about $1 billion shillings to renovate State House, to do this, to do that. We should be asking why in this country now. There's incoherence on communication. The government spokesman says this thing today. Tomorrow, the spokesman from the deputy president's office, the ministry does that. And then, 2 days ago, I was shocked that my president, that I recognize, and a valid president, had to go to Twitter. Not his office, the executive office of the president, not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not State House spokesman, to tell Kenyans that I have realized that you have a lot of concern about the jet I used. For your information, the cost of the jet is less than traveling KQ. You are telling us that going to hire a plane from another country, is better, even in terms of patriotism and the cost. And then you are reducing your president to giving amorphous statements on Twitter without explaining the facts. What should be done is just to say, it cost us this way, this was the budget line, and the cost of hiring. I have seen other stations, not this, doing inquiries about that they are bringing the facts. So, what should concern us now, and I think Duncan has said it, and Farah said it, and Mwadi have said it, is to focus on coherence of implementing a plan. But above that, Chapter 6 of the Constitution should not be a song, should not be in a hymn book.
But we've made it a habit of not implementing whatever laws we have. And Bwana Maina, back to the question on whether this conversation has been deliberately poisoned by politicians, you being among one of the members of the National Assembly.
Politics in this country is contaminated all the time.
It has poisoned everything.
And today, the issue of how the president traveled is actually part of the contamination of whatever gains and benefits that trip brought to the country.
Oh my God.
Today,
give me that.
When he was in government with Kibaki and Uhuru in finance, they went and brought in the Passats. Where did the Passats go thereafter? The Passats were supposed to do the same things he's saying today. To lower costs. How come we went back?
That's a problem.
But we went back.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Wait.
That's a problem. No, you should explain the jet. We want to hear the jet.
Please hold. Please hold.
The jet.
You will also be asking, what was the price of the suit that the president wore when he went for dinner?
We shouldn't ask.
When you look at the picture of the country, where should our conversations be going? You talk about the floods. So we went and did this expansion of our load network, but we never paid attention to the increased surface runoff and the drainage that was supposed to carry it.
That's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whether it is blocked, even if the drainage was unblocked, without widening its capacity to carry the increased runoff.
True.
But now, we want to go and talk about removing people who have encroached on the runaways, on the water runaways, the riparian reserves.
The jet.
When I look at the cost,
the jet,
the cost of travel,
yes,
by the president and his entourage,
yes,
against what he was able to go and negotiate, immediate and going into the future, I will,
gentlemen, I
ignore
can see we've successfully diverted this conversation to something else.
No.
And allow me to take us back to this conversation, because our time is almost done. We have about 10 or 15 minutes.
But how do you let this go?
I will allow you to.
How do you let this go?
But I'm just trying to minimize the risk of us taking a tangent that we cannot come back from.
Can I have a go on this?
For 30 seconds only.
Duncan Maina, the volleyball national team. You are from my headquarters, Nyeri County. Please desist from defending what is not yet explained. Kenya is waiting for the president's office to explain how much he paid for the jet. And also those contracts that have been signed is not money on the table. And there's an election in November in America. We don't know what Trump will do with those agreements, because Joe Biden, in all likelihood, is outgoing president. We don't know, but there's a likelihood. The Kenyans have every right, and I know Farah will defend this, without prejudice, to question utilization of national resources. And if there is anybody, particularly a member of parliament, I would say this, I can shed a tear, who can defend the wastage that is happening in this Kenya Kwanza government, Kenya Kwisha, Hustler, and particularly now spotlighting on the Interlude that went to US. When another president came a week later from Iceland, a very rich, small but very rich country, and used our own KQ to go to Malawi for a meeting, and our own president can also use our own KQ or even the presidential jet. I am not accusing the government of a wrong now, but I'm saying that we are very, very entitled to ask questions, and no member of parliament, unless you are a sycophant, don't defend Ruto now.
Bwana Farah Maalim, then we leave that conversation and go back to the revenue resource allocation issue. You wanted to ventilate on the same?
Yes. No, I think there has to be a conversation. And this conversation needs to take place in a much wider. This country has never had a conversation. We tried to do it when we were agitating for a new constitution.
Okay. I'm informed there's a slight issue with your audio, so allow us to move on to someone else, then we'll come back to you. Okay. Apologies for that. Bwana Mwathi,
Yes.
now take us back to the conversation. The involvement of politicians and what they've done to this conversation, because it would appear it's a conversation that is ripe, that people would need to have this conversation, but the source, where it is coming from, is what people have a problem with.
I wouldn't question the source it's coming from, because remember, leaders are elected as representatives of the people. This gentleman sitting next to me is elected by the Nyeri town constituency. So when he speaks, ideally, he should be speaking on behalf of the Nyeri people. Mheshimiwa Fala Mohammed also comes from a constituency where he's elected. So when he speaks on behalf of the people around there. So when the politicians are ventilating or discussing an issue, is really the country that is discussing, because the assumption would be very simple, that they go to the grassroots, that he doesn't stay in Nairobi throughout his life. He goes to the village and listens to the people on the ground and understands what are these. He listens to the governor, the MCAs. Hold on. Let me finish. Let me finish. Our problem is that majority, 99% of them have forgotten that they represent the people. So they speak for themselves. That's a problem. To an extent, now they have poison in the conversation, because it's always, what is in it for me? To an extent, we sat with you here, and you told me we had somebody here who was saying that Lintuli had been cornered because 149 members of parliament had voted him out. And you remember, I laughed, because after that session, a committee was appointed to investigate him. Members of parliament have voted,
but that is the constitution,
to be impeached. The constitution of the group that went was 7 out of 11 were part of the group that voted against his impeachment.
The minority.
Meaning that from the word go, you go and verify him. You can argue it's a constitutional issue, you can argue whatever you want to argue, but look, farmers were given stones instead of fertilizer.
And nothing was done.
Nothing happened to the person responsible. Unfortunately, in the discussion that came, he was involved. One would have wished that he was a CS, so he was not involved. But in the conversation that came, he was involved in that deal. There's no question about that. Then you save him. That's our problem. That the people that are supposedly leaders are not. The people who are supposed to lead this country, instead of discussing session on paper number 10, because we don't have a number 11, instead of going back to number 10, and say, if it worked for Malaysia, if the paper for Nairobi worked for Kuala Lumpur, why don't we get back? Because it's gathering dust in some office. It's still relevant. They're still now talking about one man, one vote. Others are saying we have been marginalized for the last 50 years or 100 years, losing the focus of the purpose for them being leaders in a country. This country has resources. This country will be ahead of Singapore today.
Okay.
And if this country became rich, we'll all be rich. But now what has happened? 1% have become rich. And we Kenyans are not stupid. We are not cognizant of the fact that a person is elected today and goes to parliament or goes in some leadership position in this country, and all of a sudden he's the richest man in his village.
Okay.
We know his salaries.
You go next.
Yes. Honorable Kabado knows me quite a bit.
Yeah.
I first contested the parliamentary seat on the Safina ticket, unknown to Honorable Farah Maalim. I have not gained interest in political leadership overnight.
True. That's
it
true.
has been a journey of the last 16 and a half years to date.
Yeah.
When I pursued leadership, I had my own ideas about how political leadership should be conducting itself. Today, the people of Nyeri Town constituency can tell you whether in the 1.5 years I have attained the image of politicians that has been the norm or the standard.
What is that?
You know, that the large living, the acquisition of overnight wealth.
Yeah.
And I made a promise to the people who elected me that the salary I would be paid as a politician would be sufficient for me and my family. And the resources that would be entrusted to me, I would safeguard them from my own hands, the hands of my friends, and the hands of my family, and ensure I would be a true steward. However, how come once I came to Parliament, I got a vehicle? Yet I had the same vehicle I used to campaign, I still have it in Nyeri. And therefore, there is an accepted norm for leadership. The provision, not of excesses, but of an enabling environment for me to exercise leadership. We are stuck in history. So we had session paper number 10. Why did we craft Vision 2030? What would you like us to do? Would you like us to discard Vision 2030 and go back to session paper number 10? We are evolving. We failed to implement session paper number 10, partially because clearly from that paper, the country has advanced. In certain areas, we have done well. In others, we have not done well. Our fixation with the past is one of our key problems. This is where we are today. Where do we go from here? Okay. If we allowed that to become our conversation in this country, we will change big time. The issue of corruption. The most guilty people are the people who give bribes. If we all as a country decided we will no longer bribe Maina Madenge, we will no longer bribe Farah Maalim, we will no longer bribe the policeman, we will no longer bribe the governor, this country would change with that single decision collectively among us as Kenyans. Mm-hmm. Who will propel that conversation that we have to change across the board our way of doing things? Until we accept to undertake that fundamental change, we'll keep having these conversations. Okay. We'll keep going round the mountain.
Okay, and as we come to the end of the conversation, we seek a way forward on this issue of resource allocation. Yes. Which way should we go? Given the fact that we appear to be going round, and now you're suggesting we go back to the sessional paper number 10 of 1965. Surely, we have other things that have happened up until now. Are we saying that failure to implement sessional paper number 10 and failure to implement devolution properly as enshrined in the Constitution, that will be the way forward, Bwana Kabanda?
Instead of talking about the Somali growing very fast, we should be talking about ensuring that EACC, the judiciary, and the Office of DPP work as per the Constitution without patronage, so that we streamline the question of integrity in leadership. Instead of people fearing when other community meet in Ilimuru, whether they meet 100 times, we should be asking about the cohesiveness of our country in the counties and national governments, and therefore the National Cohesion and Integration Commission mandate to be implemented, and the petitions lodged if it fails to do its job, because that's what it should do. Instead of now blaming history so much, and we are here today, we should be asking whether it is not time, like other countries have done, from India to Canada, to Australia, to Tanzania, to shift the capital of this nation, Kenya, from Nairobi to Isiolo. We should be concerned that when floods hit this city and this country, just about 100 meters from where we are seated, we are inside Karura Forest, and thank you for coming to the Heritage of Wangari Maathai, the studio. Just 100 meters from here, there is an estate that people have not been living in for like a month now, almost to a month. Can go to 2 months, and in more than 15 houses, and about 300 meters from here, on Kiabu Road here, There's another estate where the most expensive house has been built by a young couple, but they cannot go back to the house for a month now, despite pouring about 300 million in it. About 500 meters from here, as you go towards the two rivers, there is another estate where people are using boats. Yet, in those estates, in the Roda, in the Ridgeways, in the Degua, in Muthaiga North, we have not had the cries of people to go and supply blanket or clothing. Yet, about 450 meters from here, across the road on Thika Superhighway, we have Madare, where my own estate, about 3 weeks ago, a well-wisher mobilized us to donate clothes and foods and all that because of the poverty that is across the road. That should be concerning us, that resource allocation and distribution, the question of equity, the proportionality of the vote of resource is not about marginalizing this community or stigmatizing this region. It's about creating a system where everybody feels a sense of belonging. Our concern should be not about Luos meeting in Iseme, like they did in Migori the other day, and Luo, who is a national leader and a patriot, Raila Odinga, being in that cultural festivity in order to award them. We should not be worried when Musalia Mudavadi every December is hosting the Maragori Cultural Festival that was initiated by his father, Moses Mudavadi. So we should not also be concerned when Farah is hosting Somalis anywhere. Okay? He goes even to Somaliland. He goes even to Somali country. Our question should be, how do we integrate a passion of leadership that condemns the corrupt, that condemns the evil? And today, I'm telling you, today, the greatest curse we have is incompetence, surrogate leadership, you can call them sycophants, ethnic bigotry that is happening, and even the fight that you see at the palace today between the president and the deputy is not about communities. Mm-hmm. It's about other private interests. And that is what should concern us. Mm-hmm. So the rallying call, whether you are in leadership today, elected or appointed, or you are just a commentator as a civilian, should be to continue petitioning like we did recently with Dr. Ekuru Aukot, the CEO of the Committee of Experts that we did, that midwife the Constitution in 2010, and the last clerk of the Nairobi, Philip Kisia, the founding chairman of National Nairobi Central Business District Association, to Haiti, where our own commander-in-chief president is being manipulated by USA to take our own soldiers to Haiti, yet you have a lot of insecurity and terrorism in northern Kenya, you have a lot of insecurity in Marakwet, you have a lot of insecurity in Nairobi. Those are the issues that should be embracing and mobilizing our spirit, our soul, and call on the government to act and tell one William Ruto, Your Excellency, Mr. President, we respect you, we recognize you. Please don't be the African puppet for the West.
Thank you so much, Bwana Kabando. Faramali may go next.
Yeah, you know
your final words.
Yes. When we talk about sessional paper number 10 was of 1965. Every year there are sessional papers.
Yeah.
So that's now in the past. If you're going to have the first sessional paper in 2024, you say sessional paper number 1 progressively until you have as many as you want. The idea was intensification of government resources in the high potential areas as opposed to extensification of the development of the country. In other words, you're saying take resources from this, all the rest, and just put it in this narrow place, focus in this. And justification was that this is going to earn us foreign exchange and the rest of it. There is nowhere in the world that kind of thing had ever happened. Nowhere where you say, let's forget about certain marginal areas of the country itself, and let's just focus on these areas for development purposes. Now, because it was an institutional government, sponsored marginalizations of the areas that were not high potential, and discrimination for those ones who are high potential. There is always a need for us to try and have certain redress to balance the act itself. We tried to do it with the district focus development for district focus, where the focus was for districts and the rest of it. But that was not much either. I don't have any problem myself with anybody or any development being taken everywhere, because so much development, trillions and trillions of Kenya shillings, have been sunk into certain areas in this country or certain regions in this country. Well, some regions have hardly had anything. We're not saying that you forget about these ones because you have put in too much in the first place and focus on these ones. But the reason why we got the equalization fund was to try and bring those areas at par with the rest. So the imbalance in development is a very dangerous thing. Whether it's at the regional level, ethnic level, faith level, whatever it is, it now then creates a fomenting ground for uprisings and communities, and the nation itself can even be lost. Many nations were lost as a result of that. Misuse of the authority by the governing group that time. So my position is I have no problem with us taking development everywhere, but this way of trying to create a new criteria that was never in our constitution in the first place. Because landmass is there, the degree of development is there, and all those things are there, and then you just come back and because you feel you have, and this is not a conversation for the community, it's a conversation for the community, there's nothing wrong with it. But it affects all the other communities in the country. So you cannot tell people that I'm going to work out something to make sure that I get an undue advantage of the natural resources, and then you don't have to deal with it because you can also have your meeting somewhere else. So this was in bad taste. And it's not going to be taken kindly by the country. Whether it's a political, flop or flaw on the part of the deputy president and whoever is dealing with him, whether he did it for trying to maintain certain relevance I started off by telling you that all this ethnic politics was basically relevance for those ones who are propagating and who are in power. You get my point, to try and create an ethnic bloc that is going to rally behind them. At the end, it's a personal interest. It has nothing to do with the community. Okay. So I have no problem with us developing our country in the four corners, children all over the country. But this business of trying to say, let's redo the criteria again so that we get a bigger advantage than those ones, I mean, it does not work. And there's no way you can justify it. Okay. Your freedom of association is there. Anybody can go anywhere. But the country belongs to us all. So you can't justify that.
Very well said.
Yes.
Bwana Maina.
Yes. In the past, this country has participated in peacekeeping missions across different destinations. That did not mean that we were not having internal challenges. I have tried to think that as Kenyans, we should redefine the new units for equity in our country and shift from our ethnic numbers to counties. Because today I keep asking Kabado, for example, when we went to Limuru 3 and said we were talking about the Kikuyu community, what did we say about the Kikuyus in Lamu and the suffering that they have been facing and the challenges that they have been encountering there?
Good question.
Our conversations as a community, and we have a right to meet as a community, but let us make it inclusive, but let it not be driven by a desire, by a certain segment to dominate, influence, and power over that community. I wonder, how many other communities, Farah Marim, who is the kingpin? When did Northeastern have a conversation about a kingpin?
We don't have. We've never had.
When did
actually we belong to how many different parties? Look at
how many. When did the coast have a conversation about kingpin?
No, they have had.
Who?
No, they have had a meeting.
Who emerged as the kingpin?
Can I answer you that?
Coast?
Can I answer?
Yes.
You ask.
So let's.
They had a meeting.
Let's. Okay. You see,
last month
they had a meeting.
Yes.
They had a meeting. Was the meeting basically based on the competition of who is the kingpin of the coast region, of the Mijikenda.
Yes.
I will seek to differ. If we need to have that conversation about the kingpin, then let us define who is the leadership, the different phases of leadership. He is a leader within the community. But when they went to Rimuru, they failed to recognize that after my 15 years of struggling, I am now in elected leadership.
Who refused? Some people.
Because the organizers did not make it in. All right?
You want to make your final comment.
Lastly,
stop.
The redistribution of the fair distribution of resources, this country has received a new direction under President William Ruto in what he's referring to as the value chain approach to allocating resources and developing. Under that approach, you find we have an initiative to reform the coffee sector, which is largely dominated by the Mount Kenya region. Under that initiative, there is an initiative to reform the sugarcane sector, which is dominated by the Western region. There is an initiative in the brew economy, which largely is in the coast and in the lake region. There is an initiative around livestock, which is more dominated by the pastoralists. You know, when you say the north, the Maasais feel we are out of this.
They're also part of the north.
So the redefinition of how then we share resources without awakening the raw competition based on ethnic numbers and regions.
Thank you.
However, the internal conversations of communities should be encouraged to happen. They should not be elevated to dominate the national space.
Okay. Very well said. Finally, Bwana Mwathi, you wrap it up for us.
I would say that there's a difference between a hot dog and a dog. A hot dog is something you can eat. A dog will bite you. So one is food, one is danger. And hence, it behoves on us, especially for leadership, to rethink very much whether they can do this. When somebody mentions session of paper number 10 that worked for another country, he's desiring that the leadership come up with something else, because we haven't seen anything. 40 years after that session of paper did magic to another country, we are still in this, exactly the same hole we are, talking about ethnic bigotry. The point is this, Fred, that leadership must move on, must progress. And if they have no ideas, they go back and seek for it. Because the past is not a place of residence. It's a place of reference. To an extent that if you have no new ideas, go back to the past and use the one that you have. If you didn't use it, if you cannot be able to think today of something that can build this country. And this country requires very simple thing. To think that leadership is about creating equity for everybody. And how do you do that? Is providing people opportunities. When I mention about northern Kenya, and you can mention every other place, every part of this country has an economic advantage. Leadership should be concentrating not on the distribution of what is available, but overridden by the advantages that every region provides for this country. Nevada, in the US, complete desert country.
Yeah.
Somebody went there and started what you call gambling.
Yes.
As bad as it is for Islam, that I've been to Las Vegas. It's richer than Kenya, one town. It's richer than, I think, whole of sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
Because somebody went into a desert.
Yes.
And created an advantage of that desert. So this leadership must refocus completely from this 60-year-old story, old record. You know, I know you didn't find those black records that used to repeat sometimes when it's cracked. They stopped that. One man, one vote is a cake. come out of it and say, if you go to Kiambu, how many people are Kikuyus in Kiambu? Even, and you're talking about Ruiru. A constituency has 500,000 people. How many of those are Kikuyus? I can tell you the minority. They're minority. That's why one MCA is from Nyanza, as it were. So the bottom line is, this country must evolve from a 60-year-old political, ethnic bigotry to development. And development has nothing to do with resource allocation. Zero to do that. It has to do with identification of the economic advantage of every region so that you fund that economic.
Donate a minute to me.
No.
Unfortunately, we are out of time.
Yeah, we are out of time. Now, sorry. So that the resource economy, the revenue allocation you're talking about is not money going to Kiambu or Murang'a or wherever. It's going to sponsor to fund that advantage that Murang'a has.
But friendy, politics 101, let me tell you, is about distribution, acquisition, and control of resources. And as we finish, I would like to celebrate two people from this studio. A man from Turkana County, Ekuru Akot, the Chief Executive Officer of the Committee of Experts that midwife the Constitution 2010. I want to celebrate Abdulkadir Mohammed, lawyer, senior counsel from Mandera County, who was the chairman of the Select Committee of Parliament where we served, that actually assisted to implement Constitution 2010. And therefore, as we celebrate the minority from Turkana and the minority from Mandera, let us also tell everybody who has ears to hear that, like every other community, the Kikuyus have the right to meet at night during daytime, not to admonish anyone, but to pursue community of interest, and nobody should be paranoid about any ethnic group of this country.
Thank you so much.
But one last
30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds. Let me tell you one thing, Kabando.
Yes, sir.
I see a lot of conversation around Somali and Somali business and the rest of it.
Yeah.
By the way, this is one community that has never been intimidated by whites, by everybody, by anybody.
True.
So the point is, whether you go out there in wherever and talk in all your places and you meet, but then with the right of association, you use this now as to demonize section of the society. It doesn't bother anybody. Okay. The point is, we are doing well because of the social structure. All my money goes to family members and relatives and the rest of them who have to be educated. It's the social structure in the Somali such that you never see them very rich and you never see them very poor. The social structure in your community is different. You have more resources, 10,000 times more resources than Somalis, but just use it the way the Somalis want to use it if you want to go far.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Help your people.
Don't condemn anybody.
Your cousins and everybody. Don't blame it on somebody else.
He is going back to factory settings. Don't go back to factory settings. Don't hate the community.
Political analyst.
Stop Kikuyu fear.
Former MP.
We have never feared any government.
You do.
Never ever.
You do.
You're the ones who started the
conversation. Allow me to end this conversation. Asanteni sana, gentlemen, for your contributions to this.